Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I'm going to talk about the sad cancellation of Pennyworth. Obviously, this news came out like 2 weeks ago, so I'm getting to it a little bit late. But I am bummed by this. But even by the season 3 finale, I was still kind of like, I wasn't even 100% sure the show was going to get a 4th season. Just because of, obviously, a lot of DC stuff has recently gotten canceled. Obviously, before the announcement, like a week or so maybe beforehand, maybe even a couple days, was the announcement that Titans was getting canceled along with Doom Patrol, and then there's like a lot of stuff on the CW that had gotten canceled, so it's already kind of been heading in that direction. So that's why already at that point I was like, I'm not sure whether or not, you know, Pennyworth was going to come back for a 4th season, which is kind of a bummer too. Like, it only got 1 season on HBO Max, because if you remember before, prior to that, it was on Epix, so it just feels weird, like, oh, it transferred over to HBO Max, and yeah, it got canceled. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of contributing factors to it, maybe like viewership. Yes, the DC restructuring, I'm sure, plays some role in it. I don't think that's all of it entirely, because I feel like so much of that stuff, and I don't know, maybe they choose not to go down that route, but it could always flow into the Elseworlds of things. I mean, once again, the multiverse is a very big place, and, you know, especially with the Elseworlds of it all, it could have fall into that category. So that's why I'm like, there had to be other contributing factors, or maybe it's just kind of like, the show had its time and that was it, which is kind of a bummer, especially where the show ended up. I won't spoil anything, but even I'm like, it's not like we've gotten to the beginning of like Bruce's, like, oh, where Alfred's story kind of really begins for some people, and that's obviously with Bruce losing his parents and becoming Batman. We're like kind of nowhere near that point in that story of like, like just one more season and Alfred would have been, because they even went through the trouble of calling it like Pennyworth, the origin of Batman's butler, which I think it's funny because you wait till the 3rd season to do that. They specifically waited till the show was coming to HBO Max before they added that subtitling, because there were 2 full seasons beforehand that did not have that subtitling. So I always thought that was kind of interesting. But it's also like, where the story ended, once again, no spoilers, Alfred was nowhere near, for one, being the Alfred that he becomes for Bruce. And if you have watched Pennyworth, there are other elements to that show where you're like, so how do you go from point A to what seems like it's going to be point Z, because Bruce will be the end-all be-all, like, but it's like, yeah, like, we're nowhere near that story necessarily. And also because it is its own continuity, they were doing their own thing, so I'd be so interested to find out what that continuity would have looked like. I mean, we were never going to get the full, like, oh, this is what Batman's story looks like in that universe. I mean, who knows? Maybe, like, the series finale would have been like, and we see an older Alfred looking after an older Bruce, and get a little bit of, like, a Smallville ending where, like, you know, you saw Tom Welling's Clark Kent running, and then he has, like, opens the shirt, and that's the, like, you could get something similar to that. Like, you get a silhouette, kind of. I mean, even Gotham gave you like the full bat suit at the very end, but most of it was just like in shadows and just kind of like hidden away. So I don't know. And it's just so interesting because, like, I think Pennyworth was such a different show because it was like very like spy thrillery, and it was also very not shy away from like getting bloody. Like, there's some pretty like, I mean, especially, I feel like they toned it down in later seasons, but like season 1 had some pretty gruesome like depths and stuff that's kind of wild. But I think the show kind of held no punches, and it was just, it also gave you an opportunity to see Alfred, who's always kind of been that supporting character, see him on the main stage and see him and his character growth. Like, Alfred wasn't always the greatest guy, so to kind of getting that picture of like how conflicted and complicated he was to be, I mean, and once again, to be able to have been able to see that journey of him being who he was, who we got to know through the show, and become the butler and confidant and ally of Batman that we know he eventually would be, to be that pseudo father for Bruce Wayne, you know, that would have always been an interesting aspect to see for that journey. But like I said, there's also a lot of like elements to that it's like, how would this continuity have handled that stuff would have been really, really interesting. And once again too, the 3rd season ends on a massive cliffhanger. You're like, so where would you go for season 4? I feel like the show probably would have ran maybe 5 seasons, just because Gotham ran for 5 seasons, and obviously like one of the main people behind the show, Pennyworth, is Bruno Heller, who also was the driving force behind Gotham. I don't know if it's a lot of people from Gotham. I know Bruno Heller in particular, but there might have been other people connected to Gotham associated with Pennyworth as well. So it is a once again, massive bummer that things kind of played out this way. But once again, it's just kind of like, it's just the way things are. Like, if the circumstances were different at DC, maybe we'd be getting another season. Along with a lot of other things, we'll probably have gotten at least one more season. Once again, I've always preferred a show being able to end when, like, it's like, at the very least, having a heads up to be like, hey, yeah, you're getting one more season, and that's going to be it. At least you could probably time jump around a little bit to kind of feel that. I could definitely see them time jumping. I mean, they already did a pretty massive time jump between season 2 and 3, so what's one more under the bag, you know? And then you probably get a little closer to kind of that ending that I was talking about earlier, but, you know, who knows what they fully had planned. I mean, maybe some of the creators had put out, because I think maybe the showrunner or somebody had said, like, oh yeah, season 4, if they got one, was going to be wild. And it's like, that's like, Pennyworth, it's a bananas, like, crazy show to begin with, and I'm like, where would you take it in season 4? Would have been so interesting to see. Once again, I'm kind of bummed by the news, but once again, it also kind of comes as no surprise. Doesn't make any less sucky, but, you know, the news still comes as no surprise, sadly. Yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and good